especially since there is news about wild berries, which is already in flames. And Firepoint said that it was our Ukrainian FP1 missile that flew in and did its good deed, and it affected the economic situation in the Russian Federation. Let's discuss the so-called Olivier Index, or the consumer basket, whichever is easier to understand. Well, we are talking about a grocery basket that a person can afford and that should be in every family, so that a person can eat, develop, and feel good. And just how good can the Russian Federation feel about its grocery basket today? And what exactly can the average Russian afford as of today? To what extent are they now switching to cabbage soup even without the cabbage?
In this particular case, I think I'll probably answer your question by referencing a video I recently saw coming out of Russia. In this video, there's a guy, well, basically just a young guy, who walks into a supermarket, just a regular supermarket, and he states his intention right away. He says his main task is to run in, take a quick bite out of half a cucumber, and then run right back out. And honestly, that is currently the main task for forming the consumer basket of an average Russian citizen these days. Run into a supermarket, take a bite out of half of something, and run out. And that's your whole Olivier salad right there. Well, to put together an Olivier salad, you need to take a bite out of half a cucumber, some potato, well, just a raw one in the supermarket, a little bit of peas, right? And douse it with some mayo, also half a jar of mayo, douse it, and run out. That's figurative, of course. But these are the harsh realities that Russians themselves are filming. Little videos they share when they see the shocking prices on the tags in their local supermarkets. And this is just the beginning, because the consequences of what is happening right now, as was correctly stated in your segment, are that for Russian farmers, it is not even profitable to harvest the crops at all. It is simply economically unviable. Plus, there is not even the physical capacity to do so.
Andre, you really should have put some meat in the Olivier, too. After all, I'm eating this.
No, Andre, Katya, I disagree with you.
Continuing the recipe?
Why do they even need to eat Olivier, really, right? Russians have a saying, SHCH and kasha are our staple food. Olivier is definitely not on that list. What meat?
It's some kind of bourgeois dish, not communist.
And actually, what you said about being able to make SHCH without cabbage, that would be a perfectly wonderful combination. And really, Andre, what's the outlook? Well, look, the share of the population that can set aside spare money has decreased by 6.5% and currently stands at 48% of the citizens of the Russian Terrorist Federation. At the same time, 34% of Russian citizens believe that now is a bad time to save money, while only 26% view the situation with any degree of optimism. So it turns out there are some optimists there, actually. And how do you feel about the outlook for development regarding the current financial situation? What will happen next?
When Russian statistics paint these figures, I would strongly advise them to at least take a moment to compare them with their own official figures that they published, for example, just a week or maybe 2 weeks ago. It really makes you wonder about the consistency of the data they're putting out there. Literally, somewhere, indeed, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, those same official Russian statistics released a staggering figure showing that 81% of Russians are now forced to save money even on basic groceries. How exactly can you reconcile this figure, their own figure, mind you, taken directly from their own official statistics, with the stark fact that 48% of Russians claim they can still save something? It just doesn't add up, especially when 81% of those same people are now forced to save even on basic food and groceries. How do those two realities coexist? In other words, Russian statistics are inconsistent, even within their own data. They are incompatible in terms of indicators. Well, that just goes to show the truthfulness of these statistics once again. I mean, it's really just like how they used to report 80% support for Putin. Admittedly, they are reporting a little less now, somewhere around 70%, But when you are actually looking at the videos coming from Russians themselves, you honestly just don't see that 70% support for Putin anywhere. Well, that is probably exactly why. Just yesterday, they didn't even allow the fake opposition, that so called completely Kremlin controlled Yabloko party, to run in the upcoming elections. I mean, the Kremlin is genuinely afraid of even some kind of formal opposition so that people could at least somewhere, actually speak out in support of someone who isn't directly from the Kremlin. It's really about silencing any alternative. That is just how incredibly great the fear is among the Kremlin rulers right now, that they did not even allow the Yabloko party, which they completely control, to run. This is also a significant result and real tangible evidence of the statistics that they tend to throw out from time to time, just to show us all once again that seemingly everything is still basically fine and under control. It really highlights the ongoing narrative they're trying to maintain. Well, there are some minor little problems, but in principle, everything is fine, and it will be even better later on. So we should look at Russian statistics, well, with humor, right from the start, right at the entrance, as they say, right from the get-go. With humor, even, especially when comparing Russian statistics with themselves. I mean, according to different data that they put out at different periods of time, the data's incompatible. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is what is actually happening. And what is actually happening in Russia is a chain reaction. A chain reaction. And it all started with the systematic destruction of the Russian oil industry, and then it continued with the aggressive squeezing of the Russian, well, this 3% of GDP that revolves around wild berries and other major online marketplaces. Next, this spills over into the banking system, where banks are already illiquid, don't have the money to give Russians back their own deposits and service Russian enterprises of the banking system. But it's only a matter of time before this chain reaction finally hits the walls of the Kremlin.
Uh,
Well, it's just a matter now, just a matter of time. It's not even a question of whether it'll happen or not.
Andre, look, well, in this situation, in this whole chain, a very important point is logistics. We always understand that logistics in the Russian Federation was not a strong suit. It's not a trump card that could be played. And that, by the way, is the reason why Russia has always lost wars, not just in this century. And now we're talking about vehicles that can't go anywhere because of this whole fuel chain. Fuel they're starting to dilute. It's also garbage trucks. By the way, did you see the news yesterday? In Dagestan, out of 22 garbage trucks, 12 broke down. And the city is literally, well, it's a mess.
Well, you know.
It was left in garbage. Everything just stopped there. Owners of Chinese cars in Russia have started en masse to return their vehicles due to breakdowns of engines and fuel systems designed for high-quality gasoline.
I'm talking about my own thing. Why do they need it? They don't need this transport. Horse-drawn suits them fine.
Well, on donkeys, yes, we've already seen how they're trying to fight. But again, these Chinese cars are breaking down, production is grinded to a halt. And this trend, how can we track it? I'd like to ask our best. Andre, what do you think will be the next step if even Chinese cars are breaking down from this fuel that they're supposedly trying to sell as gasoline?
The next step is, undoubtedly, simply the halting of all transport processes that any modern economy relies on. What is bad fuel? It's essentially the breakdown of any type of vehicle you can think of, starting from the everyday consumer level of private owners' cars all the way up to heavy-duty commercial vehicles. And then the exact same thing will happen with rail transport as well, right? Because at the end of the day, bad fuel simply means engine failure, which is a major issue for everyone involved. And what kind of spare parts are used for engine repairs? Mostly imported ones. And what are they under? They're under sanctions. And even if you've repaired it, you pour in that swill again, and it's back to the engine and the entire vehicle being taken out of service. And it just goes in a circle like that. Why is aviation fuel already? Well, first of all, they have banned exports again because of an acute shortage in the domestic market, most likely. But if you look at the data, the number of flights has already dropped by tens of percent. This is, again, because the fuel is low quality, and they are saving the high quality fuel that is still in warehouses and reserves, and the number of flights is accordingly constantly decreasing. Plus, again, the impossibility of servicing the planes themselves due to sanctions, right? According to safety standards, so this chain reaction is already happening across all sectors of the Russian economy, absolutely all of them. The Russian economy is grinding to a halt, gradually stopping, and there's no good solution here anymore. It simply doesn't exist, especially if you take into account that Ukraine's strikes are very successful. They aren't stopping, after all. They are practically daily, right? And every day, every night of these effective Ukrainian strikes is another plus to the losses of the Russian economy, another plus to the momentum of the Russian transport system and logistics grinding to a halt. It is a gradual shutdown of the economy, and there's nothing to replace it with. There's nothing to replace all these processors, these transports, right? Even if you have the money. And here we run into the next link in the chain. And there isn't any money left either to solve any problems. In other words, there is no good way out. There is no way out at all right now for the economy of the Russian Federation. Again, as I started with, it's just a question of time before this big economic closet of Russia simply collapses.
Well, I would like for that to happen as soon as possible. You know, one of your colleagues on our broadcast even used this phrase: the economy of the Russian Terrorist Federation is collapsing. I really like that. Well, I would like for this financial collapse, the final one, to happen as soon as possible.